Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Meteorology Lab here, the fourth day in 2018, and we've got clouds back. We had clear skies earlier, and we've got a series of strong short waves moving across, and this is one of them. You can see it's moving very quickly with 120, 130 knot winds up there at about 20,000 feet. So we'll take a look at the vorticity chart, and you can see what this wave looks like as it moves across Texas. Some other news. You can see that our book has moved into pre-media, which means it's advanced up to where somebody's actually looking at it to make sure that their print machines can handle it. Hopefully it doesn't get kicked back to us. That's really what I want to avoid. If not, then we should be good to go for printing the book here on either Friday or Saturday, so we'll see how that goes, and then we'll be looking at about 3 or 4 days for books to arrive here, plus shipping. All right, we've got our system out there in the Atlantic, has been moving up the Gulf Stream, up to the Canadian Maritimes, and don't have very good radar coverage up in the Maritimes, but it's pretty good that this radar site, this web page, UQUAM, it is a Canadian site. They've got all the Canadian radars, and we can pick up bits and pieces of that storm system up there. And it looks like the heavier precip, some of that could be ice, but it's moving across Nova Scotia right now. Down in the U.S., it's looking pretty quiet, but some of that lift from that shortwave is showing up in the Edwards Plateau and hill country of Texas, northwest of San Antonio. There's the isobars and thickness lines. So once again, we've got cold air spilling southeastward through the Great Lakes. The axis of the coldest air is where these lines dip southward. So we're talking about this axis right here, from around Lake Huron down to Ohio, West Virginia, and Virginia itself. So this is following in behind this outgoing system right there and moving up over the Atlantic. And then we also do have some warm air wrapping northward. That's coming north across Nova Scotia up into Quebec. So warm air advection and a bit of a supply of moist air coming up from the south. And that gives us some pretty good isentropic lift. So very heavy rain up in that region. And then out west, it's pretty quiet. We've got ridging and rather warm conditions. So that's the thermal ridging right there across the southwest deserts into the Great Basin. And then a couple of systems offshore, not particularly strong, but I would think that the fronts probably look a little bit like that right there. So about to hit Victoria Island there in Seattle and maybe coming on shore perhaps in Northern California in a couple of days. Looks like another system lurking out there. Okay. There's potential temperature showing the cold air there in Lake Huron, and the red lines indicating potential temperature is above freezing. So lots of cold air across Texas, and we're bringing in a little bit of recycled air, modified air, but it is definitely warmer than it's been the past couple of days. Oh yeah, I wanted to mention a bit of Lake Superior. I thought y'all might enjoy this. Back in 2002, we went out to UP in Michigan there, and I thought I'd show you a few clips here. You know, we wanted to see what it was like up there during the wintertime. So this is around March 18th of 2002. So this is heading up in around the Green Bay area. And this is Lake Superior. This is along the shore. And it's showing a lot of ice that's been pushed up onto the beach. And we really couldn't figure out where the beach began and the lake started. So you would have had to walk a ways out there. And, of course, that's pretty treacherous doing that. So there wasn't a whole lot to see except a lot of ice coming up on the shore. And yeah, there's some more of that ice drift. And we were able to see aurora activity, which was pretty neat. There was a bit of a magnetic storm going on. And there's the snow all piled up outside the door. And this is Ontonagon, Michigan. And this is Minnesota there. So that's kind of a look up north, up in this area here. Okay, now we will take a look at the satellite. You can watch the outgoing storm there in Maine and the Maritimes. Okay, David Holcomb is joining us, and Sue M. and Ryan Toomeys. Ryan reporting 46 there at, I think, Fort Lauderdale, down there in South Florida. Ron Chalfant in California is here, and Burl H. and Adam Davis. Fun with Tech and Megan John reporting negative 11 in Minnesota. Started a FEMA emergency management training, and first day of senior year of college starts Monday. Well, congratulations there. He also says it's time to get this meteorology degree. Yes, definitely. Justin Pulliam is also here. Jason Boggs. Ryan Johnston's asking about Monday, Tuesday, storm for Louisiana. Yeah, we'll be going over that when we get up to the GFS models. And the S. Kinney from Medford, Oregon. Okay. So let's get back to that satellite image. Lots of cold air advection going on off the coast, very strong offshore flow. In fact, you can see the streets right here, the cloud lines across Ohio there, and that blows offshore onto the coast. And as we get that offshore flow, we get kind of a lake effect out there. And we mentioned yesterday the progs were looking for about 10 inches of accumulation offshore. If there was like maybe an oil platform or something like that out there, that's about how much accumulation they would get. So very unstable air off the coast where it's picking up that moisture. And then up to the north, lots of cold air up in Ontario. Yeah, this is another thing I wanted to show you. Aviationweather.gov is a good place to get surface and satellite data. And I find it's pretty useful for satellite. So it's kind of a good one-stop shop there. And these regional images are kind of good for that purpose. So there we can see earlier today, this is the, let's see, this is the infrared. Let me bring up the color. So this is the color imagery, infrared there in the Great Lakes, and everything is so cold that we're not picking up any detail except for the warm lake waters, like right here. This is Lake Michigan, and then you can see Lake Huron here and Lake Erie. So this is kind of like where the warmer lake is bleeding through, and we can look at the temperature scale down here. This is why aviationweather.gov is useful. So we can look up here and see this is kind of a medium orange. So that corresponds to about 0 Celsius. And then where we have the land showing, that would probably be the greenish colors, not the blue, but the warmer greenish. So maybe right up here around the UP of Michigan, we got a very light green color, which is indicating probably surface temperatures of about minus 20 Celsius, which is about minus 4 Fahrenheit there. And then where we pick up the blue, that's probably clouds, because naturally it's a little bit colder up at those levels. So a lot of this here, that's going to be the lake effect clouds there coming on shore there in Michigan. Light blue is about minus 28 Celsius there. So I think what we've got going on here is clear skies where we have offshore flow, around Milwaukee and Green Bay. And then as the flow crosses the lake, it becomes unstable, and then we get clouds on the other side. So that's kind of a look what's going on, and a very similar pattern up in Lake Superior here, where we have offshore flow and some of the lake bleeding through there on the image. So it's very hard to detect clouds, and that's the reason we use enhancement schemes. So by using this scheme here, we can kind of maybe pull out the cloud detail a little bit, and looks like maybe that's a little bit of cloud there. Basically, wherever we see movement, that clues us into there being clouds, like right there. And where it's stationary, like right here in Michigan or Wisconsin, there's no movement at all. So that tells us that that's going to be cold ground there. And then I think up here in Minnesota, we've got a little bit of stratus sneaking southward. I can see a little movement around Minneapolis, St. Paul there. So it looks like a little bit of stratus advancing southward. Okay, and then down in Texas, we do have that shortwave moving through, and there it is. So we've got a pretty strong south branch, and probably a shortwave somewhere in the Big Bend area, maybe something like that. And this is indicating maybe a bit of jet energy like that. Sometimes we can pull that out a little bit using the water vapor imagery. So there's that right there. So right here, this is where we have the strong downward motion in northwest Mexico. Very strong, very warm temperatures showing up from below, not being attenuated by moisture. So this is kind of like the downward side of the jet. And then this is probably the upward transverse motion on the south side of the jet there. So that indicates that probably in between is where we have a jet axis. So maybe that right there is what's going on. So that's one thing I might look for on the upper level charts there. And definitely some showers moving across the hill country there. Okay, can we find those short waves? Well, the vorticity chart is good for that. And there it is right there. Let's back that up. There's what it looked like earlier today, right around, this is going to be right around midday. Then we advance that a little bit forward to the current time, and we're kind of in between these two frames here. So yeah, it does look like there is a little bit of a shortwave back around the Big Bend area, maybe a little further west. Or it's possible that the model may not have initialized this very well. And so let's see. I'm getting a little bit of weird effect here with the pen, but you can see where there's this red spot right here. That's probably a jet max, and you can kind of see that moving southward across Wisconsin and then down towards the Virginia area. So that's that tight channeling moving eastward, and then it's gone from the Great Lakes. And then it looks like a couple of other shortwaves move across right here around, there we go. Another shortwave moving into the southern Rockies. That'll be in the Texas area for Sunday. And that'll dig down into Texas and Louisiana for Monday. And then another weak shortwave right there. A couple of them, kind of a small train, moving across the Great Lakes, and that would locally intensify those snow showers there. So one shot coming up for Sunday. And then, here's another one coming in back in behind. So that's one way you can use this to find the upper level energy. All right, so let's see. About the only other thing to cover tonight is the surface chart. So there's a look at the temperature plots right now. When we go north up to Ontario and Manitoba, we can see lots of minus 10s and minus 20s. And that's advecting down into the Great Lakes, where we have single digits in Michigan and Illinois, and all the way down to Ohio. Some very cold air, and Toronto showing up about -1. And that's going to advance into New York and Pennsylvania for tomorrow, so it's going to be a very cold day up there in the Northeast. And then taking a look down in Texas, we can pick up the clouds associated with that shortwave right there, and a few of the stations there reporting some rain. Okay, so I think we can go ahead and head into the forecast. So up there in the Northeast, we can see that very deep system there, a 960 millibar low in Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. That'll be heading northeast, and the wraparound snow will be shutting down in Maine later tonight. And behind it, the cold air is coming southeast, and you can see it streaming into New York right there. So it's going to be a very cold day, lots of single digits. And here's a good chunk of cold air, 1040 millibar high. I'll give you the 1038 millibar outline, or maybe the 1030 millibar outline. Let me do that. That kind of gives you the extent of the cold air. All of this is a cold air mass, and looks like a pretty good chunk of that coming down right there. So until that passes, there's going to be very cold temperatures there in the Midwest and the Northeast. So we're not looking for that area to warm up until, see, here's where it comes through Virginia on Sunday. And then finally we will have the warming. You can see the very deep fetch of air from the Gulf of Mexico coming northward. So probably by Sunday and Monday we'll see a rapid warm up there in the Great Lakes. And then for Texas, we've got kind of a series of waves moving into that area. So we're going to be under kind of a recycled flow off the Gulf coming into the weekend. And here comes a shot of energy right there. This is Saturday. Now it's crossing the Rockies. You can see snow showers there developing in Colorado. And next stop is Texas and Oklahoma. And there we can see the system start blowing up. We have cyclogenesis coming together. This is Sunday night. Pretty good low pressure system coming together there. Maybe the warm front might be a little further south, maybe something like that. And as that moves eastward, showers and thunderstorms for Louisiana and Mississippi. And we're not going to know the details for at least a while. This is still 84 to 108 hours out, so there's no point going to the NAM model. And the other problem with using the NAM model is domain boundary errors. When we're this far into the future, 96 hours, a lot of the short waves are going to come from beyond the confines of the NAM model. Let me see if I can find NAM domain. I'll show you the coverage of that model. And I'm sure, yeah, here we go. So that kind of shows you, this model is focused mostly on the North American continent and parts of the Pacific. It doesn't have global coverage like that, and some of these waves are coming from very far out into the Pacific. So you have to trust that the model is handling that correctly as it comes into the forecast zone there. So for the time being, it's better to stick with the GFS, and then once we get down to about 48 to 72 hours, then we can start looking at that NAM there. So what we do know is showers for Louisiana sometime early on Monday, and that'll move into Alabama and Mississippi later during the day on Monday. And it's very quick moving. It looks like by late Monday it's already crossing Alabama into Georgia. So that could be a sign of a very shallow system, maybe not much of a surface response there that might limit some of the severe weather potential. I would like to see that more slow and well developed. Well, I mean, that's not going to be good for severe weather. We don't necessarily want severe weather, but if we were expecting severe weather, that's what we would be looking for. It's kind of a deep, slow-moving system. The Pacific gets active for Tuesday and Wednesday. Let's see what goes on there. 1 week system for Saturday. And then there's a good rainstorm coming in for Tuesday. And wow, yeah, this is pretty well developed here. And we can see the thickness showing a couple of closed thickness contours, which indicates that this probably has a very well-developed upper level low. Let me see if I can pull that up here. Yeah, see that right there? This is up at 300 millibars, 30,000 feet, and we've got a cutoff low coming into California, kind of like a big bowling ball coming into that region. And of course, that we'll be heading for the plains around Wednesday or Thursday there. So let's just see where this originates. So it's coming from this system on Sunday, and you can see that by Saturday that wave is all the way almost to Japan. So you're kind of trusting that the radiosonde data off the coast of Japan and in Japan and Russia and all that is good, because that influences how well this forecast picture is for Tuesday and Wednesday. So, you know, this is definitely subject to change between now and then. It's still 120 to 140 hours out. But it definitely is kind of a very stormy pattern. A couple waves, major waves moving in from the Pacific. And let's just look at the trend. A pretty good digging long wave there. And that means stormy conditions there for the Pacific. Pretty good fetch there coming in for the 18th and 19th. So it's very likely that the large-scale pattern is good. So I do think it will be kind of stormy there around mid-month. But the exact timing of these waves, those are much more up in the air. Okay, and that gets to the end of that sequence. So let's go back to the forecast. So we are looking at kind of a stormy mid-month pattern. There's that system there for next week, and here comes the one from the Pacific. So that'll definitely be visible as it crosses the Rockies for the 10th and 11th. There it goes. Snow showers in California, cyclogenesis on the lee side. And this will probably be a well-developed system. So I'm thinking the fronts are going to look like that. And this is definitely going to favor a dry line. So somewhere in here we'll probably have an active dry line. If there's enough moisture, we could get severe weather potential in this region. But this looks kind of dry here. And indeed, you can kind of see, leading up to that, the flow coming out of Mexico. If we're looking for severe weather in Oklahoma, we need to see flow coming out of the Gulf of Mexico and Caribbean. So the trajectories there are not really there for severe weather just yet. Okay, and there goes the system up into Illinois. Pretty good front coming in behind that on the 11th. 1046 millibar high. Looks like we got a wave coming in on the tail end of the storm, developing around Louisiana and Mississippi. There it goes. And a couple waves coming in behind that. A little bit of an Alberta clipper for the 13th there. And let's see here. There's the next Pacific shot coming inland. And then an even deeper one for the 20th. So that's about all we know. And with this very fast-moving pattern and the waves coming all the way from Asia, there's going to be a lot of uncertainty past the 120-hour point. So we'll just kind of wait and see there. But I think most of the Arctic air is pretty much done with there. Okay, one last look at chat here. Meg and John lost the feed there. Sue M reporting offline. A couple people saw the feed come offline. Okay. Doesn't look too bad. My meter here showing only a very weak drop there. So, okay. Ryan Toomey says it's so cold the internet froze. Ron Chalfant talking about Santa Barbara, warning people in the fire areas, preparing for flooding and mudslides. Yeah. Okay. AccuWeather has rainfall amounts on the upslope areas and the fire areas from 2 to 4 inches. Dry line in January. And Megan John reports so much cold and boring weather for Minnesota. And Michael O points out the last wave runs up the Appalachians. Yeah, we shall see. Okay, that's about all I got for tonight. I appreciate you all watching, and hopefully we will see you all tomorrow. Take care and have a good evening.